If you ever sat in a meeting and watched a colleague put on a performance while you're trying to contribute something meaningful and they get all the attention, then stick around. I mean, come on. They use all the buzzwords: collaboration, innovation, change management. But there's no substance behind the show. Now, here's the kicker. Even though you may have big credentials like maybe a PhD or a patent and the record of landing the most coveted assignments in your group, you still feel less than compared to their flash. And you start to wonder, am I losing because I'm not a showman? Should I be more like that flashy person? What am I missing? Today, we are deconstructing the comparison trap. I'm sharing the story of a brilliant client with all the credentials behind her name who felt like she was being outshined by a superficial colleague. And we're going to talk about how she realized that her quiet, deep relationships were actually the only thing that her leadership team truly trusted. If you're an introvert who is tired of feeling like you have to put on a show to be seen as strategic, this video is for you. I'm Christina Holloway. For over 25 years, I've coached senior leaders at organizations like Google, Meta, GE, and Oracle to architect their authority and navigate the high-stakes politics of Fortune 500 businesses. On this channel, I show you how to stop playing small and start communicating with the presence that demands a seat at the table. All right, so let's get started. Personally, I think my client had a complicated problem, but I also think this is very common. And I went through a period of imposter syndrome. The more people told me I had this amazing strength, the more I would ask myself, why can't you see yourself the way others do? And none of it made any sense in my head. And for my client, she was an introvert first, and she also had a PhD. She had been hired at a multinational health sciences company, and she had been very successful there. And in reality, she was happy where she was, and she understood that she was successful because she enjoyed her work. She was qualified for the job, and more importantly, it pretty much came easy to her. She liked the people she was working with, and they liked her too, a lot. She was also one of those people who just exists in her role, and good opportunities would come to her. You did well on this project. Here's some more responsibility. You gave a great presentation. Here's a great assignment. You handled that crisis really well. This executive wants to work with you more. I mean, I think we all know that someone at work who just naturally enjoys their work and gets recognized for it. They have balance. But she also had a colleague who was very competitive. And this is really important. A very competitive person really only feels engaged with their work if they feel they're winning at something. That means they want to be the best or win the competition, or be congratulated for their achievements. Not all competitive people are difficult to work with. Let's be clear about that. But there are some who make showing up to work a real challenge for some of us. So to set the context, this competitive colleague, and my assessment was that she didn't have much substance, was always positioning herself against this client of mine. Why? She needed to win. And if she was going to win, it was going to be against the only other person in the department who was measured through excellence. My client was that person. There is a little psychology here around why someone feels the need to pit themselves against a colleague who isn't even paying attention to the game. And the psychology of my client who started to second guess her presence at work because she wasn't competing at this level. There are two people here. One who doesn't have much substance, so she puts on a show and positions herself against a notable colleague. And the other who succeeds with ease and wonders if there's something wrong with that. In a very subtle way, she was being drawn into a competitive game that she really didn't know how to play. And layered on top of that is an entire company culture that really doesn't provide support for either one of these personality types, and that's where our coaching started. Essentially, my client was constantly forced to deal with this colleague. Remember, someone who worked twice as hard to be seen but had half the results. And this colleague was competitive, jealous, and performative. While my client was getting the big assignments, her colleague was trying to make small projects look big just to keep up, okay? My client told me, I don't understand why I get this work when I don't put on a performance. I feel like I'm the only one who can see through her fake star quality. Really good insight too. This is called the performative mirror. When you are an introvert with substance, you often mistake being loud for being strategic. You think that because you aren't marketing your wins, they don't count. But Leadership isn't falling for the show. They are tolerating the show while they rely on you. So let's talk about how to add balance back into this situation. We had to shift my client's mindset from performance to endurance. This was difficult because she really had a hard time with the comparison. Flash is temporary. It cannot endure a crisis, and it certainly can't produce impact. So I'd ask my client, who does leadership call when the stakes are high and the results actually matter? And the answer was always her. But to her, the answer was more, well, of course they do. I'm always reliable. And that's the nuance. Her strength wasn't in star quality. It was in trustworthiness. Because she was an introvert, she built deep one-on-one relationships rather than wide, shallow networks. These relationships made her endearing and, more importantly, indispensable. We worked on marrying her substance with a quiet form of visibility. You don't need to put on a show. You just need to ensure that the people who matter know the why behind your wins. Here's an example of how it worked. My client had easily been handed leadership of a product that was important, and most likely because of her PhD and her patent, and she had the substance to lead a really important product. This made her colleague very jealous, and as a side note, I wasn't working with her. But I can imagine she equally said, I work the hardest and create all this buzz. Why is this quiet person getting all the great assignments? And I would have said, because she has substance, not flash. But when my client received the special assignment, she decided to travel to a local region to talk to the people working in that field. She collected a lot of information, came back, and created a full program based on that feedback. And also, those field associates loved her. They shared tons of information. They appreciated that she came down there. She established trust with them, which helped when they started really telling her what was happening there and where they needed support. In the meantime, her colleague would call together committees or subcommittees, create assignments, check in on the work, and then have someone else do the report. She wasn't involved at all. Could she answer nuanced questions from leadership? No, she couldn't. And they knew that. That's the difference between creating connection and just creating work. Now, it's different if you're creating opportunities for a subordinate you want to showcase, but she wasn't doing that. This was all performative so she could look like she was leading. There's a difference between leading and appearing like you're leading. And the biggest question here is, yeah, but what about all those performative people who do end up at higher levels? And we could all tell you that they were full of fluff with no substance. But here they are being celebrated for being average. Seriously, I get it. And the short answer is either play the game or move away from those people. Ask yourself what sacrificing your sanity is worth. If you're good at playing the game and you have something tangible at the end, then go ahead and do it. If you're not that person and that's not your style, move away from it before it eats you alive. And the hardest part for my client was that crossroad. She had no ambition to be the loudest person in the room. She didn't want to play that game, but she felt she was failing because she wasn't. It was really wearing on her. She felt like there was something wrong with her leadership style. And this colleague had completely gotten in her head. And keep in mind, my client was winning at a game she wasn't even playing. That's the crazy part. And I had to keep reminding her of that. So we talked about personal worth. Your value isn't tied to how well you mimic someone else's style. It's tied to the unique architect moves you make. So let's talk about how she was architecting her authority. She didn't know it at the time, but she had her own followers and her own fans inside the business. While Loud Colleague was collecting shallow accolades from random people she felt she was influencing, my client was impressing leadership, people who were decision makers and understood what substance meant inside accomplishment. Remember this. Even if you struggle with imposter syndrome and you're not sure why people love your work, take a minute to step back and ask who you're really working for. Who needs to be impressed with your work? Who is going to make decisions about your next career move? Impress that person. Work on strengthening those connections. Focus. Focus on what matters most, and it's without question the people who believe in you. It is much easier to reconcile your imposter syndrome once you have meaningful conversations with the few people who believe in you. Ask them why they believe in you. Ask them, what do those strengths look like? I did that. I kept telling my boss some of the assignments could be handed over once I trained up other people, and she said, no, we're not doing that. I hired you for this. because you're the only person who can do it the way I need it done. And I realized in that moment that my ability to customize a solution to suit the person who hired me was my strength. For my client, when we stopped the comparison, the mixed signals disappeared. She realized that she wasn't behind in life. She was exactly where she needed to be to lead her own way. And of course, she landed another big assignment before we finished because honestly, she was brilliant and really wonderful to work with. I learn just as much from my clients as they do from me, and I am lucky I get to work with some really great and interesting people. Look, my client's story is a powerful reminder that while flash might win the meeting, substance wins the career. If you are being distracted by a performative colleague, or if you've started to believe that your quiet, deep work style is a liability, it is time to change that narrative. My client didn't have to become a showman to succeed. She simply had to stop measuring her internal worth by someone else's external performance. She moved from a state of career malaise to a position of true influence because she chose to architect her authority on her own terms. If this story resonates with you, type substance in the comments below. I want to hear from the introverts who are ready to own their quiet power this year. This is just the first part of our February series on moving from imposter to architect. Next week, we're going to talk about the tactical side of this struggle, how to lead a group of experts when you're still stuck in fixer mode. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss that kickoff. And as always, you can grab my communication toolkit at the link below to start developing a leadership style that actually feels like you. I'm Christina Holloway. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.